his power to punish his enemies and reward his friends. It is a part of human nature, and it's one of the things that I crow about a lot on Tall Tales, that if you have a government office, some power that comes to you because you work for the government, what libertarians would say a power that has its existence in state violence, number one, you shouldn't use that power. You shouldn't use the government's back scratcher to scratch your own back. If you're the director of public works, you shouldn't make sure that the street in front of your house is paved, or even worse, that your driveway gets paved. Now, we've seen allegations of such things in the past. And by the same token, if you have the ability to do something to someone that puts him in a bad situation, the fact that you don't like him should not be reason for you to use that government power that way. And the way I explain it is that the law, such as it exists in one part to see to it that people who have power under the law exercise that power in accordance with a law, with some kind of a law that's higher than their own personal preferences. It's when you have people that use their own personal preferences in the name of the law that things turn to ashes. And I would give you a classic example, Second Amendment and the judicial cancellation of may issue gun permits in jurisdictions that have may issue gun permits. And we had one here. We had a may issue. The statute said that the chief may issue a concealed carry permit if he finds that 1, 2, 3. So if the chief didn't want to, the chief didn't do it, because there was no safeguard to see to it that he did not use his own personal proclivities in the case of issuing those concealed carry IDs, and that's what the Supreme Court said. Can't do that, folks. Okay, here's Candid's editorial. Guam's governors have been using their regulatory agencies as weapons against their political detractors for years. Maybe that's the reason. Maybe that's the reason we've got Lake Areola up there in the corner of Chalamahuna and Marine Corps Drive. Yeah.
He doesn't like you.
Well, it's not him. I imagine this telephone conversation. Vince? Yes, Governor. Vince, Bob Klitzkie lives up there in Chalamahuna. Can't you do something to the intersection? He's always saying bad things about me on Tall Tales. Oh, yes, Governor.
How dare you?
I can take care of that. How long would you want that to last?
Forever!
No, that's just my play acting. I really don't think the governor would do that.
It's an uncanny voice you do, though, Bob.
Yeah. Well, maybe I ought to run for governor. You just vote for me and be all in.
Forever!
Okay, so back to the editorial. Guam's governors have been using their regulatory agencies as weapons against their political detractors for years. It's a veiled practice that needs to stop. And with the latest victim of the abuse of power being the elected Attorney General of Guam, perhaps the practice will be exposed and brought to an end. The administration has messed with the wrong guy. 2 weeks ago, the deputy director of the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority, which administers the federal Section 8 program, publicly denounced newly sworn Attorney General Douglas Moylan on account of his father being a landlord of a Section 8 tenant. Moylan, as AG, has nothing to do with GURA. It's an autonomous agency. GURA's officials may confirm this by reading the 2005 Guam Supreme Court case, Airport versus Moylan. Ironically, the victor in that case is the same Doug Moylan who now finds himself in the crosshairs of a highly political and obviously capricious campaign. Gura deputy director made defamatory statements against Mr. Moylan at a meeting of the Gura Board of Commissioners. Come on, Troy, you know better. There's no Board of Commissioners up in Sinatya. It's the commission. Practically accusing the Attorney General of corruption. We're in the midst of the twilight zone. Late Speaker Antonio Ampenco is fond of saying that in politics, timing is everything. Consider the timing of this attack. Moylan announced the formation of the Government Corruption Division within the Office of Attorney General. The same week, the Gura deputy director launched allegations against him. Rumored to be at the top of the agenda for the OAG Government Corruption Division is a review of the public auditor Benjamin Cruz's 2021 audit that alleged the illegal sole source procurement of a multi-million-dollar hotel contract by the governor's then legal counsel and son-in-law and consigliere. That hotel, it was later discovered, had a multi-million-dollar loan with the bank owned by the governor's family. Her son-in-law worked at the bank prior to this stint as legal counsel, then went back to work for the bank after his resignation from the governor's office. Okay, so that's the timing angle, right? Now, I've been all over that one. We've talked about it on Tall Tales. I've asked for leave to file an amicus brief in that very same case, which is Attorney General versus 4 government contracts. If there was ever a bogus case, that's got to be it. So I filed for leave to file an amicus represented by Doug Moylan, of all folks. And Doug had to substitute himself out, of course. And just last week, my leave was granted, and my amicus brief will probably be filed at the beginning of next week. And I'll give you some of the highlights of that when it comes up, knowing that the media won't find this interesting because it doesn't put the governor in a very good light. Now, as far as Moylan versus Gura, I was able to obtain something that Fernando Esteves published on Facebook, and I'm going to read that tomorrow, sort of as a rebuttal to this editorial, and I emphasize the words "sort of as." There's a lot to discuss in both approaches. Now, when this whole fracas between Esteves and Moylan came up, it was shown on the card just exactly that way, Esteves versus Moylan, because it seemed that in addition to whatever else was involved, I could detect a certain animus on the part of Fernando Esteves, and I made full disclosure. Esteves was not my favorite senator during the time he was in the legislature. He played fast and loose with the Sunshine Law. During one protest at Anderson, he linked arms with other protesters and blocked ingress and egress to Anderson Air Force Base. Protest, stand beside the road with a sign. I did it myself. When I was a senator, if I could find it, I'll even post it on the show here, where you'd see me standing beside the road down in East Agania with a big sign that said, "Roll back the GRT." Yeah. That was when we were in the minority, and that was probably the most effective thing members of the minority could do when you had a Democrat majority. Jose, remind me of that, and I'll see if I can find that. So there's nothing wrong with that, but this idea of locking arms and disobeying people who tell you to move, no, that doesn't work very well. So Fernando's not high in my book to start with. But I'll get into that a little bit more when I read his piece for tomorrow. Now, as far as Doug Moylan is concerned, it's on the card. It's pretty far down, and I haven't gotten to it yet. It's I can't even find it on the card. No wonder.
Yeah, Doug versus Estevez.
Oh, yeah, down in the bottom. Doug versus Estevez, yeah. So if I ever get there, I'm going to explain my comment that when this came up, my comment was, I don't see that Doug is going to come out of this winners. And I'll spend a little bit more time on that when I get to that item of the card. Maybe now that we're where we're at, maybe I ought to move it up closer to the top of the card. Okay, going on with Troy's editorial here. In response, Moylan has filed a complaint of discrimination against Gura that raises several concerns about how Gura has been targeting politicians who are not politically aligned with the governor. The Attorney General sent a disclosure request for a number of documents related to Gura's handling of other politicians, including former AGs, Section 8 landlord matters. The documents disclosed revealed a disparity in how the agency has dealt with different politicians. For example, former Governor Eddie Calvo, whose father is a landlord of several Section 8 tenants, received a conflict of interest waiver during his own administration. Yeah. On the other hand, the same Calvo administration went after then Senator Michael San Nicolas, whose father was a landlord of Section 8, a Section 8 tenant. San Nicolas argued against Gura's determination against him, reasoning that as one of 15 senators, he had no power over Gura's regulations. He also made the same claim that Moylan is making in his discrimination complaint, that he was being singled out while other politicians were treated differently. Now, that's what lawyers would call selective prosecution, and it's an extremely difficult case to make. Of all of the unfettered discretion in our governmental system, prosecutorial discretion is right up at the top of the list. Nobody can tell a prosecutor what to prosecute, who to prosecute, when to prosecute. Nobody can tell him not to. It's a prosecutorial discretion. Now, people can tell him, but he doesn't have to. Obviously, he doesn't have to pay attention. You can't make him do those things. So it's really hard to make a case for selective prosecution. And, a simple common sense counting of noses doesn't necessarily get you there. Well, these three people on this side of the road weren't prosecuted. I live on this side of the road, and I was prosecuted. These three people didn't get tickets for leaving their car out overnight on a snow removal day. I did. Therefore, it's a hard case to make. The Calvo administration's objective was obvious, and I also know for a fact that former Governor Calvo himself wanted Gura to go after Mr. San Nicolas because the former senator and congressman was the proverbial thorn in the governor's side. Now, when Troy says he knows it for a fact, we got to remember that Troy worked for the Calvo administration. He had an important position in the Calvo administration. And when he said that San Nicolas was a thorn, I think at one time or another, San Nicolas was a thorn in everybody's side. If you were to do a census, if you could get the doctors to fess up all of the wounds, stab wounds in the sides of politicians that they had to treat, you'd probably find very few politicians didn't get wounded at one time or another, including members of the Democrat Party leadership. But, of course, that's what we liked about Michael San Nicolas, right? But I go back again. People who have governmental power shouldn't use that power to settle personal scores, shouldn't use the government's backstrack. You can't use the government's back scratcher to scratch your own back. You can't use the government's knife to stab somebody else in the back. Unfortunately, that abuse of power carried on into the current administration, when in 2019, Gura sued San Nicolas over the matter. The case continues in court, and a tremendous cost to the former congressman who has maintained his innocence all along. Well, we're talking about civil cases now. So I don't know that innocence is exactly the word I'd use. Innocence is a word maybe when you're talking about things like naivete, innocence, etc., maybe even spirituality. But even in criminal cases, the word innocence doesn't come up. If a criminal goes to trial and the jury finds for him, they don't find the defendant innocent. They find him not guilty, which is not close to being the same thing. So in a civil case, if the case goes against you, it means either the judge or jury or judge and jury found you culpable. These are not the only cases of governors utilizing regulatory and law enforcement agencies to punish or silence their detractors. Look at what is being uncovered in federal court regarding the Calvo Tenorio administration's use of the now defunct Mandana Drug Task Force. Remember George Macris? A former lieutenant governor led the charge to suspend his medical license and remove all hope for patients in need of hyperbaric care for years, simply because Macris was exposing corruption at Guam Memorial Hospital among a cabal of politically connected doctors. Now, who would that lieutenant governor have been? Well, let me just check my memory here. I can't remember. We ever had a lieutenant governor that was a doctor, Jose?
Oh, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it was him or not, but yeah. And hyperbaric, for those of you who don't know what a hyperbaric care is this. A hyperbaric chamber is a sealed chamber where you put a person who has certain kinds of wounds and you put pure oxygen in the chamber under high pressure. And a hyperbaric chamber brings about a much more rapid healing process than exposure to the air does. Hyperbaric chambers can also be used for divers who come up too fast and are at the risk of the bends, because it puts pressure back on the system so that the nitrogen in the bloodstream doesn't bubble and screw up your muscles. So Macris is a very regular contributor to another talk show on The Point, Jose. And he always has a lot to say. He's always very interesting, very factual, very knowledgeable. And then we go on from Dr. Macris to Dr. McNinch, who has his own, according to Drive-Thru Jack, has his own hyperbaric chamber. It's located right below his nose.
Has a mustache for a roof.
Yeah. Dr. Ron McNinch at the university dared to expose the cover-up of sexual assaults of students and was punished for it. Then he sent 2 emails critical of the current governor, and he was punished again. 2 words, Jeff Evans. Jeff Evans is the guy that got me my start in talk radio. Yeah, there was a time at the old Take 5, which is next to the Bank of Hawaii building, when everybody who wrote columns or had talk shows got together for coffee in the morning. Jeff Evans, Joe Murphy, a guy whose name I forgot that did sports for the Daily News, the legendary John Anderson, folks like that. And Jeff had a show very imaginatively titled The Jeff Evans Show. And Jeff was on TV, an hour on TV every night, and he kind of plowed the same ground that Tall Tales did. He dug into things and said things, named names, called, etc., and of course developed a certain set of enemies in the process of doing that. So whether or not these are connected events, I don't know. Well, maybe I do know, but I'm not going to opine. He was prosecuted for failure to file his income tax return and did 30 days in federal lockup because of it. Yeah. And about the time that matter was pending, it was found that he ran afoul of our gun registration laws. I don't remember if it was the ID or anyhow, and he was charged for that. So Jeff spent some time in the Las Vegas detention facility and then wound up at the end of his 30 days at the federal prison at Nellis Air Force Base. Lee Holmes, who was the owner of cable news at the time, terminated Jeff's employment and brought Jeff back as an independent contractor. The name of Jeff's DBA for his independent contractor job was Wounded Elephant Productions. And Jeff explained that the most dangerous animal in the jungle is the wounded elephant, because he still maintains all this strength, but he's got an extremely bad temperament. So 2 words, Jeff Evans. Back to Jeff Evans. So when there was a show on cable news, it was called Sunday Forum. It was on Sunday night at 6:30 every week, and it was a card type show. The idea was to have 2 guests who opposed one another on a particular issue, and it was sort of like human cockfighting. So my job at the beginning of the show was to kind of get them close to each other, to kind of peck at one another so they feel like, when the bell rang, they'd come out fighting. And sometimes it worked out. It was a pretty good show, if I do say so myself. So that was my first crack at talk shows. My first crack at radio, Jose, was back in 1966, when a friend of mine was a morning newscaster at KUAM at 0:30, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I found out about that, and I was envious. And I said, man, I'd really like to try that. Well, he got tired of doing it. He said, Bob, you want to try it? I said, yeah, well, I'll set you up with an appointment. So I went up, took about a 5-minute interview, and I got hired. Yeah, and very few people remember I was morning news, and Louis Gombar was morning DJ on KUAM, if you can imagine that. 1966. So I've been in the radio game for a long time.
I bet.
Yeah. Okay, so back to what I'm supposed to be talking about instead of myself. Troy's editorial. Let's take a short break and we'll wrap up Troy's editorial.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dededo, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Now, more Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie. Spitting truth like watermelon seeds at a summer picnic. Call now, 888-TALK, 888-8255.
So here we go. Jose tells me we're back up on Facebook. I'm trying to log in right now. And by gosh, I did it. It worked better today than yesterday. Usually I got to fumble around with it for 15 minutes to get it up. So if you really want to watch Tall Tales, you can go to Facebook, because there I am. There I am, big as life, twice as ugly. And I notice we've got people already making comments, like John S. Coleman, better known as Johnny Utah. Okay, so Troy's editorial wraps up like this. The gubernatorial abuse of powers wielded by several government agencies must be stopped. Ironically, the latest victim of the abuse, Douglas Moylan, is the one man who can bring this imperial political poison machine to a stunning halt. And I've said more than once on the show that the future of the Republican Party is Doug Moylan. Excuse me, the future of the Republican Party is named Moylan. First of all, Jim Moylan and his pen pals in D.C., and second, Doug Moylan, not because he's partisan, not because he's a partisan Republican, but because he's an attorney general and he actually wants to function like one, unlike the guy that had the job last. So if there is government corruption, Doug will not turn a blind eye to it. And I hope that there's some effort, as outlined by Troy here, to pick up on the consigliere's negotiation for a lease on the 19th floor. That would be very, very refreshing if that happened. Let's see, it looks like I got somebody in the green room here. It's none other than R. Keith, who wants to talk about Doug's editorial. Go ahead, R. Keith.
Good afternoon, Bob.
Sir.
The editorial is very well taken. I mean, it's admirable, but I find it to be, frankly, a bit naive. You're asking at least one political party to completely change its stripes. You're asking for a dog not to bite. I can't speak, too many years with regards to Guam politics. I really am only familiar with the current Red Queen and her behavior. But I can speak to politics back on the mainland and need one. You'll never find a better example of the current occupant of the White House and his regime and how he has weaponized every federal agency that there exists, particularly the law enforcement agencies, the FBI and such, as well as the IRS, on his political opponents. And if they're able to get away with it, the populace as a whole. I mean, that's what the 87,000 IRS agents was for. And thankfully, the current crop of Republicans in the House are doing exactly as the op-ed proposes. I just don't know if they're going to make any headway. On Guam, one need look no further than the topic that we discussed last time on call, which was the SHPO. While no one's saying it out loud, it's pretty much recognized that Looney Lou has sicked the SHPO on the Department of Defense to throw sand in the gears of absolutely anything pertaining to the military. They can't even mow their lawn, pretty much, without some screeching and yelling about cultural resources. And it's a shame. It is precisely it's antithetical to what our government was intended to be. But one political party, the Democrat Party, has taken that as their MO. And that's precisely, all one needs to do is look at the people whom they admire in the past, various communist and socialist regimes who the first thing that they get into power is to, go tackle their enemies and, create an enemies list and eliminate them. If not physically, then politically, socially, emotionally, what have you. It's a grand, so, getting back to the original point, it's a wonderful op-ed, and I agree with the sentiment entirely. But until people really recognize what's going on, and I just don't know if it's going to go nowhere.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Keith. A functioning, hard-working attorney general is really important. But the people, the old saying is people get the kind of government they deserve. And if the people,
Nice and hard.
and if the people acquiesce and don't take interest in their government, then bad things can happen. And in the old Lord Acton, the only thing necessary for evil to triumph is that good men do nothing. So all of our tailgaters out there, we all have a responsibility when we see these things to call it out and get after it. Now, as far as government corruption is concerned, people have been around for a while, or Keith, know that Governor Ricky Bradalio was prosecuted for official corruption. And the day he was supposed to the day before he was supposed to take off for federal prison, he committed suicide. So it happens. But that the interesting thing there, though, was that it was the United States attorney that prosecuted him for official corruption, not the Attorney General of Guam, who happened, of course, to have been his appointee at the time. And it's things like that, I think, that cause us to take hope from the fact that we elect an Attorney General. However, when we elect one like last time, we're back to the old get the kind of government we deserve.
Yep. I don't know if you've ever watched Star Trek Deep Space Nine. It was a spin-off from the Star Trek series. And it's personally my favorite of the bunch. But anyway, and I'll abbreviate, give this to Reader Digest. There was one character who happened to be a purported baddie, but maybe not, and you never quite know if he's a spy or not. But anyway, in one of the episodes, one of his former compadres gets with him and says that he's going to overturn the government, and that if he does, he can, and join him, that he can, get back at his enemies and maybe even kill anyone he wants. And his very, very dry response was, "Oh, that's wonderful. I'll get with Mila and we'll make up a list." And I just had to chuckle because it's exactly what we're talking about here, and it's actually a very funny episode. But I wish him luck. But until the people recognize it, I don't know if it's got legs. Because certainly the media is not going to, bring it. The newspapers here aren't going to bring it up.
Well, the only way to get something in the newspaper is to make sure Troy breaks it first and does the heavy lifting, and then they'll pick it up.
Yep, that's true. I wish Doug Nolan all the luck in the world. And yes, and Troy, he's performing the work that the two newspapers will not.
You got it, R. Keith. Thanks again for calling. You always add a lot to the show.
Oh, thank you very much.
That's R. Keith. Okay, so we've done the Demi Cotney. Let's turn now to the card. I've told you about making Guam great again. I need to see if I can get a calf that says "Make Guam Great Again," or maybe at least a headband or something. I've got a list of 13 things that I'm going to do to make Guam great again. Starting out on the top, number one, combat governmental identity politics. And of course, I do that every day. It turns out that the fundamental target here is the separatists. And with respect to separatists, I've got some good news today. Since we're back up on Facebook, we can run the presentation of Hope Cristobal's screen test today, right, Jose? Yeah, that'll be right after the big halftime show, Hope's screen test. Okay, first item I've got on the card is systemic racism. Oh. And then I've got, let's see, I've got Tom Pool versus cockfighting, research versus masks, Jess Lujan and the Carl versus Milton Morinaga, Russia versus Ukraine, etc. My card is, I had some technical difficulties today, so my card's not as accurate as it normally is. So I'm just going to jump right into the card after we take a short break.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
Okay, so here we are in the 3634 portion of the agenda. And once again, I'm looking at the meeting of the trustees for the Chamorro, let's see, the Bureau of Chamorro Affairs. And there are 7 items on the agenda. Number 5 is old business. They don't tell us what the old business is. So any action that they take is void because they've disobeyed the law.
Denied.
And next is the agenda for the next meeting of the Visitors Bureau. Now, I'll get to this later on, but the Visitors Bureau found out that the open government law has teeth because if you don't comply with it, you really can't take any action. Now, I'm looking at the announcement of the meeting that's scheduled for February. Oh, wait a minute. Agenda: certification of quorum, action of members, election of directors, adoption of bylaws, adjournment. You may adjourn the meeting by going to Guam Visitors Bureau, etc. But it doesn't tell you what day the meeting is going to be. It just tells you that you must RSVP by 5 p.m. on Friday, February 10. Unless I cut it, maybe I cut it off too short. I guess it's up on the top part.
Maybe you go to select vendors, you punch a card. Once your card is filled, they reveal the meeting date.
Yeah, it is. It's up above. It's Monday, February 13 at 9 o'clock.
My other way was fun.
But it doesn't tell you where the meeting is going to be. So this is the reason I put this back on. It says that you can go to this link. I suppose it's one of those, what do you call it?
Webs, it's a...
You know,
like an Evite?
No, the electronic meeting.
Oh, Zoom.
Zoom, yeah. I guess it's supposed to be a Zoom meeting. So they give you the link to get there. But they tell you it costs $19.80 a person, and you have to RSVP by Friday. Can you imagine them charging $19.80 to go to a Zoom meeting? Seems kind of strange. Unless there is actually an in-person meeting, and they just neglected to tell us where that's going to be. Anyhow, a lot of questions here. And I'm going to cover that in the next item, in the first item on the card. I'm not going to spend much time here with systemic racism today, except to mention that Dave Eckert, a well-known radio personality out of the past, sent a note to Ray that he had been to a restaurant in Las Vegas called Red Rice. And Ray spent some time talking about red rice, etc. Dave Eckert worked for K57 back in the days when they had a live traffic reporter, and that was Dave Eckert's job. John Anderson, Dave Eckert, folks like that. Even Carlotta Leon Guerrero, believe it or not. So maybe if Ray is in touch with Dave Eckert, he could tip Dave Eckert off to the fact that I'm picking on Red Rice Restaurant here in the afternoon on Tall Tales, and it's a really good form of free advertising for them if they want to get involved. Maybe they want to buy T-shirts, maybe they want to post on Facebook, maybe they want to call in, etc., because they could be an important part of systemic racism. And they could give us chapter and verse. You know, if I were going to name a restaurant in Guam, I might name it Red Rice myself. Because the idea, when you give something a name, you want the name to have what's called buzz. So if I were to open a bar and called it Bob's Place, absolutely no buzz whatsoever. If I called it Charlie Manson's Joint, yeah, there's a buzz, right? So I wouldn't do that, but I think you see the point that I'm making. So if I were to do it, I might call it Red Rice here and do like Kentucky Fried did in one of their ads that I heard a couple weeks ago, where the colonel said, yeah, we've been serving red rice here for the last 40 years. Now there's some wise guy who claims that our red rice is actually orange. Pay no heed to that. It's red. You know, that gets people's attention. So when you're in the restaurant business, a couple of things are important. That the restaurant have a buzz, and two, that customers enjoy the experience. And I'll give you an example of enjoying the experience. When I walk into a restaurant, I always appreciate whoever is greeting customers. When that person looks me in the eye and says, good evening, sir, or even better, good evening, Bob, or hi, Bob, or something like that. Good evening, sir. Welcome to XYZ Restaurant. Now, not long ago, I went to one of our more well-known restaurants, and when I walked up to the front desk, the person behind the desk looked at me and held up two fingers. So my wife was with me. Two fingers. That is not a good experience. You know, I've already been through boot camp. I don't need to go through boot camp again. You know, and of course, you know, when I questioned, you know, what is that? Peace, V for victory. Oh no, how many? My response was, how many what? How many people? There, I think the latest count, there are 8 trillion people on. No, how many people are you? Well, how many people are in your party? Well, that would be just me and my wife. Why don't people learn that when they greet people? Good evening, sir. Welcome to XYZ Restaurant. I have a nice table for you and your companion. Wouldn't that would be a good experience? Holding up 2 fingers just means that you're not important. You know, just the easiest way to get you out of my hair is all that matters. And the other little things, you know, of course you expect good food and you expect good service. And when things don't work out, you expect some acknowledgement of it and some kind of way of trying to repair the damage created by the lack of good service. I've been to restaurants here, fairly notable restaurants, where so there are 4 of us in the group, and we order, and 3 of the dishes come out fairly quickly, and then the 4th person is just kind of, what is the 4th person supposed to do? Get his phone out? You know, you got to bring it all at the same time. And if the waiter or waitress is called on it, then he's got to say, yeah, you know, you're absolutely right. Let me take these back and keep them warm until I can serve them all at the same time. I've had people say, well, I've had servers tell me that's the way the cook put them out. Yeah, so that's just examples of what I mean by good experience. I hope that people who listen to Tall Tales consider it a good experience, because that's what we try to do here, make it a good experience. I suppose I deviated from that by getting into what I would label as confessions of a grouchy old curmudgeon. So we'll get back to the regular agenda here. Next item on the card, versus Jess Lujan versus the circus. And I'm going to have to break, and right after the break, we'll come back to the host Cristobal's halftime show.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Aftershocks continue. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. In southeastern Turkey and parts of Syria following Monday's devastating earthquake.
The first earthquake struck at 4:17 in the morning local time on Monday, a powerful 7.8 magnitude quake. The USGS says it was followed 11 minutes later by a 6.7 magnitude aftershock. Then, 9 hours later, a 7.5 magnitude earthquake hit the region. In total, the USGS says there have been more than 50 quakes there.
Fox Weather's Max Gordon. 3 aftershocks in the last few hours, complicating rescue efforts. Now more than 4,600 people are reported dead. Thousands more feared trapped in the rubble in freezing weather. President Biden telling reporters Monday he would have preferred to shoot down that Chinese spy balloon much sooner.
Once it came over into the United States from Canada, I told the Defense Department wanted to shoot it down as soon as it was appropriate. They concluded we should not shoot it down over land.
Fearing potential harm from a debris field, but Tennessee Republican Congressman Mark Green says that was bad advice.
This was an invasion of United States sovereign territory, our space, by a Chinese spy balloon. The general officers who advised that thing not be shot down should be fired.
Others questioning why the balloon wasn't knocked down when it crossed over Alaska's Aleutian Islands. A small explosion followed by a fireball and a huge black cloud over the eastern Ohio town of East Palestine Monday afternoon. The blast triggered on purpose to release a hazardous chemical in a derailed tanker car. The mandatory evacuation order remains in place.
We just ask everybody to stay out. We still don't know. We have to wait till the fires die down. The railroad and their contractors will have to go in, inspect the area.
That's East Palestine's Mayor Trent Conaway. Air and water quality monitoring continue both in the area and into western Pennsylvania. America is listening to Fox News.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dededo, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
News. President Biden putting the finishing touches on his State of the Union message to be delivered Tuesday evening to a joint session of the Congress. An ABC News Washington Post poll has asked people if they are better off now than when the president took office.
Now, according to the poll, 41% of Americans say they are in a tougher financial situation since Biden's inauguration back in January of 2021, while just 16% say they are better off. Meanwhile, in the very latest Fox News survey, Biden's approval among independents is at just 33%, down 22 points from a high of 55% back in June of 2021. And if you're the White House and you think, well, that's pretty bad, well, this is worse, because when asked about the upcoming presidential election in 2024, 62% of Americans said they'd be disappointed or angry if Biden were reelected. Just 36% said they would be enthusiastic or satisfied.
Fox's Kevin Corke. The GOP response to the State of the Union will be delivered by Arkansas's Republican Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders. A police officer died in the line of duty Monday in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, outside Pittsburgh, while responding to a domestic disturbance.
The two McKeesport officers encountered the suspect. The suspect suddenly produced a handgun and shot the two McKeesport officers. Tragically, one of the McKeesport officers was fatally wounded.
Allegheny County Police Superintendent Christopher Kern says a third officer shot and wounded the suspect who's now been charged in the fallen officer's death. In Las Vegas, police believe they have finally identified the man who raped and strangled two women in the early 1990s. A cold case review retested evidence which found DNA, which led them to the suspect, but he will not be prosecuted as he died from natural causes 6 years ago. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Looking for a new home or that special place to spend your retirement? Century 21 Realty Management has the place for you. Ladera Towers Condominium in Manila. Luxury living you deserve. Amenities like a gourmet kitchen, a large jacuzzi tub, private lanai with a magnificent ocean view, and 24/7 security. Other amenities, large swimming pool, couple of tennis courts, 3-bedroom condo units are available right now. This is an opportunity you should look at now before they're all gone. Call us now at Century 21 Realty Management, 647-5003, or visit the website, LaderaTowerGuam.com or GuamProperties.com.
Join us at Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro and see why they've been crowned Guam's best Chamorro food restaurant for 9 consecutive years. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus tinactac, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet burgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña location from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for lunch, 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. for dinner, or 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. for their famous Sunday brunch.
All 3 stations, all 3 morning shows. Thanks to all the listeners for Pika's Best, Choice Broadcasting has swept the top 3 best radio stations. The Point, Boss 104, and Star 101. Top 3 radio personalities, Kyle Mandapat, Ray Gibson, and Daryl Lizava. Put the power of Pika's Best to work for you. If you're an advertiser, call 671-888-7346 for information, rates, and packages. And let us get your message out to Pika's Best listeners with Pika's Best Broadcasters. And thanks for listening to Pika's Best.
Jose, we go through this every day, but without any fanfare. Tell the folks how they can get on Rogues Gallery.
You too can get your Stand Tall and your I'm a Tailgater t-shirt by by going to thepoint.gu, click on the picture with the T-shirt and the beard. You'll go to the purveyor where you can order your shirt. When it arrives in the mail, put it on, take a selfie, and send that selfie to 671-797-8255, the official WhatsApp number for The Point. And that's how they can get into the Rogues Gallery.
Yeah, it's a wonderful service we provide there, Jose. And I didn't see I guess because of our technical difficulties, you weren't able to put Susan Regis's name under her picture, right?
No, not today. No,
Yeah.
we'll get that tomorrow.
We'll get there, yeah. Okay, so second half, Tall Tales. It's now time for the weekly event. We couldn't do it yesterday because technical difficulties, but we're going to pop it up today. It's Hope Cristobal's screen test. So here we go.
You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization. The same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest or what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to yell.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw sige dito ni Tano. Di taw-taw-tano how. Waho bini taw-taw-tano. Waho bini magahoda. Waho rason na tayo dito bini. Hago tayo rason mo bini. You need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please, Father.
Get out of here.
Please, this is not your
When I get a chance, go.
Please, please. Thank you. Thank you, Father. Please leave. No, you cannot.
What happened to you?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
Yeah, it doesn't get any better than that. Yeah. Yeah. Tototano. See hope. Yeah. It's just, we do that every Monday, or today it was Tuesday, because I think it's important for our international radio listening audience and viewing audience to see the face and voice of the separatist movement. Hope is the chairperson of the Chamorro Language Commission, appointed by the governor, confirmed by the legislature. So that's who she's speaking for. Yeah.
It's funny how we watch this almost every Monday, and there's still something new every single time. And I'm chuckling as I'm watching that gentleman going, you can't be telling her how to protest, but she's the one yelling at me. But she has a right to protest. That's why.
Yeah,
like,
and
it changes on the dime.
And then he said that he had to leave. He told the boy told Paul he had to leave because he was harassing people. And I saw the way he, did you see what he was doing with that bottle? Man, if I'd have been standing in front of him, the way he was handling that bottle, I'd have run for cover. Such harassment, such a thing. Okay, so next on the card is Jess Lujan versus the Circus. And I noticed I got somebody, probably Hope, wanting to call in and scream at me because I'm harassing her. No, it's Ken LG who wants to talk about last night. Okay, we'll let last night's hearing. We'll let Ken talk about last night's hearing because his timing is good. We haven't started a new item on the card. Go ahead, Ken.
Well, it was real interesting testifying about for a bill that was basically written to add Guam Memorial Hospital to the open government law because everybody dealing with Guam Memorial seems to have forgotten about the open government law. And in the process, we were discussing FOIAs, and I brought up that little exchange you had with Rory, that it's so sad that when politicians and appointees feel so empowered that they are actually challenging citizens to sue them. And, you know, I cited the example where you requested documents through a FOIA and Rory told you that if you wanted those documents, take them to court.
Yep.
After all, you know, I've gone to court 4 times on FOIA now. And so we discussed the number of FOIAs that I've submitted. And it was just amazing to me, the willingness of political appointees to sit there and lie to our politicians. Well, they lie to the people, so I guess lying to the politicians is no big stretch. But have Mendiola from Gita sit there and tell the senators that, yes, there have been public meetings and the doctors have been consulted on this hospital. You know, and I just corrected her to the senators and pointed out it's interesting to listen to her say that when the FOIA responses I got from the governor's office, the Department of Administration, Guam Memorial Hospital, and Gita all said that there were no charrettes. There were no public meetings held. You know, and so it goes back to, you know, how can we as citizens be expected to trust the government when they're willing to lie to us, to our faces?
If it's convenient.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, obviously, Gita is not in favor of a bill that strengthens open government and puts in legislation that any and all meetings regarding the Guam Medical Campus by name, by project, shall be public. All records shall be public. They didn't like that. And they didn't like the fact that Bill 12 would require legislative approval to sign, for the governor to sign any lease.
Yeah, that's interesting. As a matter of fact, that's on the card is Melanie versus transparency. So I think I'll go to that next, Ken, and come back to Jess versus the circus after I finish Melanie, since you've brought it up. Anything else you want to tell us about last night's meeting?
Well, it was just interesting how many, here we are talking about a $3 to $5 billion project. And remember, all the senators campaigned on how important public health is, how important Guam Memorial is, and how they're gonna work hard to make sure we get it right. And yet a majority of the Democrats didn't even show up for this meeting.
Really?
You know, so considering the money involved, you would have expected Joe St. Augustine there, right?
Yeah.
You know, we're talking about tax bonds, we're talking about general obligation bonds, we're talking about nearly $100 million lease-to-own contract. You would think that the head of the finance would have been interested in this meeting, wouldn't you?
Well, I would have thought that anyone who's a senator would have been there, regardless of which committee, which party, whatever. That's their job.
Yeah, but I guarantee you there'll be 100% attendance by the senators when we have that hearing on standardizing typeface on government documents. And you know what's so funny about that? That bill is in an illegal typeface. So here we have a bill that's introduced to the legislature to standardize typefaces, limiting it to these typefaces, and it's in an illegal typeface. If that isn't a great irony. So we had a little discussion between myself and the senators about the importance of transparency, and I cited a number of examples where the tool available to us citizens, FOIA and the open government laws, have actually resulted in a number of scams being brought forward to the public's notice and terminated. And I had a slide in there with the Med Health contract, the money for nothing contract, and how it's terminated a week after I took it to the FBI. You know.
Yeah, the most important thing from the citizen standpoint are those two laws, because they finally give the citizen a little bit of leverage.
Absolutely. Now we have an attorney general that I hope will be as serious about the open government law and the FOIA law as we are as people, because the speaker was very, very concerned when I showed that slide from Jeremiah Luther, the counsel for Guam Memorial Hospital, where he declared that attached are some of the documents you've requested. The rest of the items you've requested are not going to be released because, according to former Attorney General Leonard Rapadas, they fall into the category of discussionary documents and therefore are not eligible for release. And she agreed with me that, there's no exclusion in the law for discussionary documents. I mean, how is an invoice for travel by consultants a discussionary document? That's what I wanted to know. How is the invoices for funds paid by Guam Memorial Hospital to Hyatt for a meeting, how is that a discussionary document? So she agreed with that, and I'm going to be forwarding her all the FOIAs I've done on GMH, which is about, I think, somewhere between 10 to 12 FOIAs, and the responses I've got where the different government officials explain their reason for not providing documentation to me.
Oh, good, Ken.
And then we'll see how the legislature looks at political appointees taking such a, I hesitate to use this word, a liberal view of the exclusions put forth in law.
I would say
only 8.
I would say expansive.
Yeah.
And then, of course, I've had Rory tell me that he was prohibited from releasing a document, and there's no such thing in the open government law as a prohibition. But anyhow, I'm glad you're out there. Keep pounding away, Ken, and we'll keep working on this. And we're I think we're the vanguard of keeping this government on its toes.
Well, I look forward to being able to report to you and through you to the people of Guam exactly what they got in the 37th legislature, which I now call the third Adelature, because it doesn't serve the people, it serves Adelaide. I'm hoping that the speaker can turn it around. I'm hoping that the few people that appear to have a spine in the legislature grow a pair of big ones to go along with it and stand up for the people. But based on the attendance yesterday and the lack of participation by so many of the senators, I don't have a lot of hope in that regard.
Okay, Ken. Well, thanks for sharing with us again today. So I'm gonna change the order here. I'm gonna go to Melanie versus transparency next, but I've got another Joe who's hanging on here. He wants to talk about communism. So go ahead, another Joe.
So I just want to say that I am opposed to communism, Marxist communism. And as soon as Black Lives Matters come out and publicly state that they are also opposed to Marxist communism, then I'll feel like I can be supportive of Black Lives Matters. But until that happens, I'm very, very wary of Black Lives Matters because it's, from my understanding, from what I read, unless I read it wrong, they have been affiliated with Marxism, Marxist communism. That's my understanding.
True enough, another Joe.
So I cannot be supportive of Black Lives Matters, and the younger generation needs to understand this. Why it's going to be difficult to be supportive of former Senator you just played her saying that she's supporting Black Lives Matters.
Hope Cristobal, yeah.
Hope Cristobal. Why they need to understand why is really people should really think carefully whether they can agree with her, and because Black Lives Matters has been affiliated with Marxist communism. So yeah, I just want to say that. Otherwise, I'm willing to hear whatever former Senator Hope Cristobal has to say, but I cannot agree with her support of Black Lives Matters for as long as Black Lives Matters does not come out publicly and state that they are opposed to Marxist communism. Thank you for your time, Uncle. I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad you tied it into Hope's screen test. Thank you, another Joe. Okay, next item on the card is Melanie Mendiola versus Transparency with a sub-item, Therese Tedlahi versus Separation of Powers. And this is the Daily News report of the hearing that Ken was talking about. And it goes like this. Requiring the planning committee for the hospital administration's proposed healthcare campus to comply with the open government law, quote, crosses over to micromanagement. Yeah, so making people comply with the open government law crosses over to micromanagement. So if you got to do it in public, it's micromanagement, I guess. If it's private, it's not. Said Economic Development Authority Administrator Melanie Mendiola. Speaker Therese Tedlahi's Bill 13 would require the Planning Committee to live stream its meetings and publish advance notice of agenda items. Well, that's a ridiculous requirement, Jose. It would all, where's your horn, Jose?
How dare you?
Yeah. It would also place a representative from the legislature, municipal planning councils of impacted villages, and representatives from the medical community on the committee. That's a dumb idea. And I'll tell you why it's a dumb idea. Tedlahi's idea is that this hospital planning committee should have a member of the legislature on it. Separation of powers, gang. There's a 1927 case, U.S. Supreme Court case, that's still good law. It's called Springer versus the Philippine Islands. Came up during the colonial period of the Philippines, and it says you can't put someone from one of the branches on a committee or council of another branch in the sense of helping, in the sense of participating in the function of that branch. So legislatures make laws. That committee is not a lawmaking function. It's an executive function. So putting senators on it is a stupid idea. And, of course, it happens with some of our other commissions. The so-called decolonization commission is another example. That's why I had two titles on this, Therese versus Separation of Powers. But going back to the transparency part of it, Tedlahi, during a Monday hearing for the bill, said lawmakers haven't received a notice of any planning committee meetings or any record of decisions made about healthcare campus after November 2021. There's been no required presentation to policymakers on the healthcare campus by consultant Matrix Design Group, which drew up a master plan for the new healthcare campus, according to Tedlahi. Gitas Mendiola, the only planning committee official to appear Monday, said they had not met formally during 2022. What, they met down in Moses or?
Clandestinely, though.
Yeah, haven't met formally during 2022. Well, Matrix ironed out the plans, but there had been individual meetings between planning members. Yeah. A newly launched website contained notes and Zoom recordings of previous meetings, as well as the master plan and other information, she said. The process has been transparent, albeit confusing.
You don't say.
Yeah. She said, with multiple government agencies handling different parts of the project. Mendiola said Gita did not oppose the bill, but was lukewarm about it. Public notice could be provided online for a upcoming meeting, she said, instead of through the physical ads. Physical ads. Physical ads mandated by the open government law. In other words, ads printed in the newspaper. People might see them. If you're putting Gita in charge because you think we do a good job running programs, and if you have the confidence in us and you think we're going to get it done, then thank you. Let us do our job. Well, can't you do it with people watching, Gita? Disappointing.
Not formally.
No, not formally. Vince Cabrera, a descendant, and then, of course, we have to go completely off the tracks with this. A descendant of one of the original owners of Eagle Field. God, he must be older than dirt if he's an original owner.
Older than a Laddystone.
Yeah. Said there was no transparency around the new campus. The administration is looking to enter into a 99-year lease with the Navy. But Cabrera said he wanted to know more about alternative locations for the campus so that we can have an open dialogue. I can kind of see Mendiola's point. So that we can have an open dialogue and talk about the merits of each property has, and just not have one authority making the decision without any input. So this is what I hear Mr. Cabrera say. You should have an open dialogue. In other words, when you have these meetings, I should be able to come in and grab a microphone and shoot my mouth off about being an original owner, not about the hospital.
I have a question, though. Why is it that every time they talk about this hospital and the controversy around the transparency, the only interested parties seem to be these quote-unquote original landowners?
Yeah.
We all are also interested. Go out there and talk to the people, Pete. Or the Post, don't just talk to this phantom landowner that seems to be the only people you seem to think are interested in this.
And then why does this have to be in the same? This is a separate story.
It's a separate story.
Yeah. Yeah. So I like the idea of the open government law applying to this hospital committee, but don't put senators, don't do that. Make the open government law apply, and if they violate it, they pay the consequences. Now, going back to what Ken said, when Doug Moylan spoke to the chamber last Wednesday, he said that if he finds a violation of open government or sunshine, he'll prosecute. He'll do a misdemeanor prosecution, and that's what we need. We need a couple prosecutions.
We need some really good, stark public examples.
Exactly. Okay, then we leave Mr. Cabrera and his property at Eagles Field and go to Ken Leon Guerrero, who actually wanted to talk about the bill. Somehow they snuck him into the story here. Submitted a total of 10 Freedom of Information Act requests to Adelup, Gita, the hospital, in attempts to get more information about the healthcare campuses. Requests for basic documents had gone unanswered, he said, with GMH invoking a deliberative process exclusion and staff at Gita refusing his requests on the advice of their counsel. Senator Chris Burnett said only key insiders have been informed about the new campus, while members of the public have been kept in the dark. The new website only showed the decisions were being made without input from the community, and I don't think that transparency after the fact can be called transparency. Now, let me zero in. Transparency doesn't mean that you get to play a role in that meeting, that open government meeting. It means that you can come in, keep your mouth shut and watch. Some meetings will have open discussion. If they do, you can. If they don't, you don't get to, I have a question, Mr. Chairman, or why don't you do, that's not what transparency means. Transparency means to see and hear what's going on. And then we come back to the land lease. Mendiola was opposed to Bill 12, to Lahi's Bill 12, which would require legislative approval before the government of Guam could lease property from the federal government or other governments. The speaker said that she had introduced the measure in response to the desire to lease Eagle Field site from the Navy, but she was unsure of what other leases Gov Guam might have. Well, just ask the members of the legislature who are leasing office space for their senatorial offices. Talk to the folks at public. It's just not that hard, Therese. It's just not that hard. But of course, that's not the reason that you've introduced your bill. The reason you've introduced your bill, you should call it the Therese Tetlahi monkey wrench bill. Because if that bill became law, then the governor would not have the ability to lease land from the Navy in order to build that hospital. Therefore, you could throw a monkey wrench into the works and once again pander to the ancestral landowners, the original landowners, maybe even the pre-condemnation landowners, Jose. What do you think of that? Yeah. Mendiola pointed to a current law requiring legislative approval for lease of any Gov Guam property for longer than 5 years, which she said had lost the government millions of dollars. Now, that's approval of leases where the government is the lessor. What Therese wants to do is to approve leases for the legislature to approve leases when the government is the lessee. Quite a difference. Quote, overall at GITA, we are against barriers, and we see this barrier, and that's why we're not in support of this legislation, she said of Bill 12. Tetlahi said that the bill was not just about finances, but about how Gov Guam dealt with federal land that had been taken in the past. She maintained that there's still no evidence that the Eagles Field property was not excess. If it's not excess, then it kind of doesn't matter. Because it has to be accessed in order to be returned to the government of Guam. Quote, when we say to them, now this is a mangled quote from Therese Tetlahi, and there's a quote within the quote, which makes it hard to understand, so I'll do my best. This is what Therese Tetlahi said at the hearing. When we say to them being the Navy, we're going to lease that back from you, okay, the Eagles Field property, we're going to lease that back from you. The Eagles Field property that you dispossessed from us. Now, I don't think you can use the word dispossess as a verb like that. That you dispossessed from us from. That we have displaced people from. You ought to use the active voice here, Therese, instead of it wouldn't be so confusing. Not only does that just sound and feel wrong, but it's like an admission on the government's part. So what she's trying to say this is that we don't like the idea of leasing land from you that you took from people living on Guam by eminent domain, because it just doesn't sound and feel right, even though you paid for the land twice. She said that the land did not deserve to be returned. Now that's got to be a typo, because that's the last thing she would have said.
It's a part of that awkward sentence.
Yeah.
That's why. But yeah, I think the sentiment is that she's saying, how dare the government lease land they took away from us by telling us that the land is not that we don't deserve to have that land returned.
Oh, I got it. Yeah. Boy, talk about garb. I didn't make a note of who the reporter was, but try a little freshman comp here, reporter.
Or maybe she's running for vice president.
Could be. Okay, Jess Lujan versus the circus. Now, I'm going to take this article covers a couple things. It covers mirrors and junkets, but yeah, we got to head for Wrigley Field, and I'll come back to this right after the seventh inning stretch.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Wishing you a happy, healthy, and prosperous new year from your friends at Security Title. As we clean house for the new year, this is an excellent time to make sure the title to your land is also in order. It doesn't matter if you own a ranch in Inarajan, a house in Dedido, or a hotel in Tumon. Keeping the ownership clear promotes peace in the family and can avoid future misunderstandings. When it comes to your family property, call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
So I'm going to go to, there's so many things thrown into this article. The headline is GVB pays for mayor's senator trips, legislative oversight hearing, more bureau meetings. I'm going to go to legislative oversight hearing, and I'm going to give Jess Lujan a verbal pat on the back, because he seems to be the only person who really understands what a legislative oversight hearing is about. Now, you'll hear people say checks and balances. The job of the legislature is to keep the governor under control. When the governor screws up, there's got to be an oversight hearing so that people can be held accountable. Well, that's really not what legislative hearings are about. If you do a little research, you find out that legislative bodies, the United States, houses of the United States Congress included, have the ability to hold hearings and subpoena people to the hearings and even provide immunity from prosecution to witnesses at hearings, because it is necessary for them to gain facts in order to enact legislation. So the legislative oversight hearing is a fact-finding process, not a place for senators to grandstand, not a place for senators to show that their cross-examination techniques are every bit as good as Perry Mason's or Jack McCoy's, Law and Order music, Jose. That's not the purpose. The purpose is to gather information upon which they can draft legislation. And here's how it goes. The title here is Don't Want to Be a Circus. Lujan of the Legislative Tourism Committee said anyone can attend to watch the hearing at 2 p.m. Friday oversight hearing, but only 4 individuals will be allowed to answer the committee's questions: Morinaga, Gutierrez, McDonald, and GVB Vice President Curtis Paris. Oh, wait a minute, his name is Jerry Paris. Because it's a oversight hearing, public comment won't be accepted, he said. I don't want it to be a circus. We're there to fix what needs to be fixed and to move on. There's there's going to be decorum. There's not going to be yelling at each other. There's going to be strict adherence to decorum in the people's house. They will all be sworn in. Their testimonies will be subject to the laws that govern perjury. The senator said GVB needs to move forward. It's a system that's broken. The fortunate thing about that broken system is that it's not hindering the moving forward of activities of GVB and what they're doing and their promotion, and all that is not incapacitated in any form, which is good, which is a good thing. But if we're able to fix this and move forward, it would be an even better thing. The GVB, meanwhile, called a special general meeting from 9 to 11 on February 13 at the Doucet. Now, I got a call from the Carl during halftime, and Carl said that I just didn't read the whole announcement. He said it was at the Doucet. So it is properly noticed. And going back again to the article, Jesse's exactly right. This is not a place for people to come in and practice their oratorical skills, or, to find somebody that they really don't like and try to shame them in a hearing or something like that. So he's talking to the right people, the chairman, the general manager, council, and the vice president. No, I've done a little work on this myself. After the impasse was reached between the general manager, the Carl, and the board, it was decided to set up a BRCC, Business Risk something committee. And the committee's report is on the website. It's on the GVB website. Let's hear it for transparency. And I spent a couple hours reading it because it's very well done. Attorney Joe McDonald did a very nice job of this. He laid out the statutory provisions, the concomitant provision of the bylaws, and then an explanation of whether or not the bylaws were congruent with the statute. And if they weren't, he said, this is how you got to fix it. You got to get rid of this, or you got to do this. It's a very nice job that he did. So if the members can ever muster up a quorum, they could adopt the new bylaws, and I think that'll go a long way towards the fix that Jess Lujan is talking about. But they're kind of in a deep hole right now because they don't have a quorum. They didn't have a quorum at the last meeting. Now, if you don't have a quorum, I think the general rule is that the members at the meeting can call an adjourned meeting. They can decide on when the next meeting will be, even though there's no quorum. They didn't do that. Now, at least the chairman asserts that he has the ability to call a meeting. So if council's on his toes and chairman does, and then there is a quorum and they waive any irregularities in the call, that might do it. Then they could adopt these new bylaws and get the Visitors Bureau back on the trail. Now, going through what council put together, I'm going to rule here, and I'm going to rule for the general manager, for Carl Gutierrez, because the points he raised are basically the correct points. The board has a role in the operation of the Visitors Bureau by passing resolutions, not by passing motions saying, general manager, you can't go to Taiwan, or you must go to Hong Kong, or something like that. Now, one of the interesting things on the very first page of McDonald's report is that there were a couple of open government law violations that voided the election, the so-called election of 2 board members. So the Visitors Bureau, I guess, understands that you got to comply with the open government law. Now, they ought to get straight about not putting things in the agenda like old business without a specification, without a description of what the old business is. If there's no old business, leave that out. or put the word none after it. But it looks like we're on the road to fixing the Visitors Bureau, either at that meeting that's set for Monday, which I think I'll go to, or Jesse Lujan's oversight hearing, which I don't think I'll go to. Now, back to the beginning of the article. GVB pays for mayors, senators' trips to the oversight hearing. And as is pointed out in this article, if I could find it. Yeah, GVB President, not General Manager, GVB President Carl Gutierrez said the Bureau has traditionally paid for trips as part of its mission to promote Guam as a safe and satisfying destination. That's true. Going way, way back, when it came time to, as senators would say, divide up the pie after the election, who gets what committee, etc. Well, being chairman of the Tourism Committee is a plum, because the chairman of the Tourism Committee historically is invited on all the junkets. So you may not care much about tourism, but if you like to travel, that's where you go. Okay, we're going to head for Churchill Downs, and we'll come back and finish up this article.
Every company needs money to grow and take on the challenges 2023 will bring.
That's why Bank Pacific's commercial loan officers stand ready to help you.
We offer several programs tailored to assist companies to get to the next step or perhaps for a startup,
including working with SBA or GITA.
Now we're banking on the future. Services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches.
Bank Pacific.
We want to be your partner.
Equal opportunity lender. Member FDIC.
Credit conditions apply.
Attention investors, Century 21 Realty Management is proud to present an investment opportunity you have to look at. Ladera Towers Condominium provides luxury living centrally located in Manila with access to the entire island. Ladera Towers has 3-bedroom condominium units available now. See them before they're all gone. 4-bedroom units sold out. This investment is only going to appreciate in value. Call now, Century 21 Realty Management. The number is 647-5003, or visit laderatowerguam.com or guamproperties.com.
Okay, here we are. I'm going to finish this up here down the home stretch. Jose, I thought I had a phone call there for a minute.
Just passing some info after the show. I'll give it to you.
Yeah, okay. So President Carl Gutierrez said the Bureau has traditionally paid for trips as part of its mission to promote Guam as a safe and satisfying destination. And he's right, it's been going on for a long, long time. I suppose given our education about the color of rice, if we've been doing it for a long, long time, it must be okay. But some of the names and prices costs are included here. Let's see. Well, let me just name some names here of who the people that went. Senators Lujan and Taitigui went. And Taitigui also went to Tokyo with Senator Lujan. And Here's January 2023 trip report, which would include GVB paid trips to Taiwan and Japan, won't be out until March. Past mayors were criticized for their trips to the Philippines paid by the Mayor's Council, but this time GVB had been the one picking up the tab for mayors' off-island trips. Some mayors who brought their spouses paid for their spouses' airfare and other expenses during the Philippine trip. Quarterly travel reports show 18 GVB paid airfare for mayors and mayors involving 4 separate trips, but those included some of the same mayors, including Inalahan Mayor Anthony Chargaloff and Mongmong Totomaiti Mayor Rudy Paco. Paco is MCOG's representative of the GV board, and his absence during a January 31 special meeting that Morinaga called for resulted in the cancellation for lack of quorum. Maybe Paco was planning his next trip. Couldn't come. Inalahan's Chargaloff, meanwhile, got invited by GVB to all 4 paid trips. Chargaloff said, in his personal view, GVB may have seen how he and his office have been diligently working to improve and prepare Inalahan for the return of more visitors, etc. Well, I always give Chargaloff high marks because Inalahan is the nicest looking village on the island. If I could, I would sentence the mayor of Jigo to go down and live in Inalahan for a year to see how it's done. But that's not supposed to be why we spend government money on trips. It's not supposed to be a reward for good performance. The mayor, let's see, the off-island trips, he said, helped him gain more understanding of the important role of GVB. So what?
I want to get some more understanding too.
Okay, now here we go. The June 2022 GVB delegation of the Philippines, led by Gutierrez, included the following mayors: Paco Chargaloff, Jonas Bill Kanga, Paul McDonald, Humatek Johnny Kanata, Santa Rita Dale Alvarez, Barragata Jesse Batista, Dedidove Peter John Benavente, Tamuning Luis Rivera Asen, Frankie Salas. The mayor and vice mayor's trips cost GVB $14,500 or $1448.89 each, based on GVB's travel report. It's not clear from GVB whether those amounts included the daily allowance for hotel accommodations or only airfare. For the entire April-June 2022 quarter, GVB's travel cost total $111,267.81. Korea, Japan, and the Philippines. For July-September, travel expenses reached $98,141.72. October, December, $128,664.45. In November, GVB brought Inalahan's Chargaloff and MTM's Paco, along with Mayor's Council Executive Director Angel Sablan.
What?
To Japan. Well, you know, maybe a Japanese criminal was having his sentencing hearing in Japan, and Angel wanted to go testify. God. In January 2023, GVB brought to Taiwan Inalahan's Chargaloff, Humatek Kanata, MCV's Sablan to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the sister relationship between Taipei and Guam. Well, there you go. And of course, the money to pay for these trips comes from the hotel occupancy tax, 11% on every room rental. So you got to ask yourself, is this a good way to spend our money? And then there are 2 heroes in this story. Jesse Lujan, for understanding what legislative oversight hearings are all about, and the other one is PT Mayor Jess Alec.
I was waiting for his accolades.
Yes, sir. Jesse Alec, who is the mayor of PT and is also the president of the Mayor's Council. And here goes. PT Mayor Jess Alec, president of the Mayor's Council, also got invited by GVB, but on Monday said he decided to pay for all his expenses. After he initially wasn't clear about the trip's purpose, whether it would directly benefit the 19 villages. What a refreshing attitude.
Did you say 19 villages?
Uh-huh. Yeah. The magic number.
Magic number where weird things happen.
Yes, way back when the villages were established, it foreshadowed the 19th floor. Yeah, but what a great, and I've bounded on this before. Why do we need a mayor's council? The only real local government official we have is our mayor. They don't need to get together and have parliamentary meetings. They need to take care of the village that elected them. And so many, ours doesn't. We got 2 of them.
And again, what does the president of the mayor's council have to do with GVB?
Nothing. Yeah. And what does Rudy Paco? Why should he be on GVB? Is he an expert in tourism? Or is there this suspicion that by bringing these people along and bringing them on all these junkets, they'll have a warm feeling in their tummy about GVB?
Well, it's a good thing you didn't say nepotism.
Well, nepotism's okay, Jose, so long as you keep it in the family. All right, so congratulations, Jess Alec. Congratulations, Jess Lujan. No congratulations for you, Mr. President. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
An immense loss of life. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. Rescue crews have now pulled 4,600 bodies from the rubble of homes and buildings in Turkey and Syria following Monday's 7.8 magnitude earthquake.
Rescue workers are searching through mountains of rubble in towns and cities either side of the Turkey-Syria border. Amid the tragedy, tears of joy as parents run through the snow to be reunited with rescued children. An international relief effort is getting underway with offers of support from around the world.
Fox's Jonathan Savage. There have been 5 strong aftershocks in just the last few hours. So many buildings crumbled, the World Health Organization now estimates there could be 30,000 dead. The U.S. sending aid to Turkey, an ally, and to Syria, which is not.
We are determined to do what we can to address the humanitarian needs of the Syrian people. We've done that over the course of the 12-year civil war to the tune of billions of dollars.
State Department spokesman Ned Price. President Biden will offer what his aides say will be an optimistic State of the Union message tonight.
White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says there will be no question tonight's State of the Union is a Joe Biden speech.
This is a president that's incredibly optimistic, and he talks about the possibilities. He talks about not betting against the American people.
The president worked on the speech over the weekend at Camp David. His message is expected to focus on legislative achievements over the past 2 years and building on what the administration sees as economic progress. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders will deliver the official Republican response.
Fox's Jared Halpern at the White House. The site coordinator for the Ohio EPA says so far so good as air quality monitoring continues after a controlled explosion released and burned off a toxic chemical in a railroad tanker, part of the train that derailed Friday night in East Palestine, Ohio. But residents within 2 miles of the oil refinery not yet allowed to return to their homes. America is listening to Fox News.
It all started with the brutal murder of a young married couple. Now, more than 40 years after the couple was found, investigators and forensic genealogists are cracking the case wide open to uncover a stunning second mystery.
Where's the baby? I said, well, wait, he had a baby?
We cross the country speaking with victims' families and those close to the case as we ask, what about Holly?
I just want to know what happened.
Available on FoxNewsPodcasts.com and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network. Listen to the all-new Bret Baier podcast featuring Common Ground, talking to lawmakers weekly from opposite sides of the political spectrum about the issues of the day and how Americans can find common ground in a politicized world.
That's just not happening on Capitol Hill. It takes leadership, right?
Yeah, it absolutely does.
Along with all your Bret Baier favorites like the campaign, the candidates, the all-star panel, and much more. Available now at foxnewspodcasts.com or wherever you get your podcasts.
The House Oversight Committee will hear testimony today from border security, hear testimony about border security from some of the agents actually on the front lines.
Border Patrol agents will testify before the House Oversight Committee about the crisis at the southern border. Chief Patrol agents from the Rio Grande Valley and Tucson sectors will be among those testifying after the chairman, James Comer, says the threat of subpoenas had to be used before Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas allowed them to testify. Comer says the committee will hear from those on the ground dealing with the crisis, while accusing the Biden administration of stopping construction on the border wall, gutting interior enforcement, and pushing for amnesty. The Biden administration has asked for Congress to pass immigration reform. In Washington, Ryan Schmelz, Fox News.
A man having a mental health crisis shot and killed a police officer, wounded a second officer, and fired at a third before being wounded in a shootout in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, outside Pittsburgh on Monday. 32-year-old officer Sean Slagansky was a 2-year veteran of the McKeesport police force. Federal judges ruled that a lithium mine in Nevada does not pose a hazard to the endangered sage grouse and has ordered federal regulators to reconsider giving that plant a permit. Operators of the mine have a contract to supply lithium for the batteries to be used in General Motors electric vehicles. A man who helped to make doo-wop a driving musical force in the late 1950s and early 1960s has died. Charlie Thomas, who spent 60 years with the Drifters, has passed away from what a friend says was liver cancer. A member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Charlie Thomas was 85. Wall Street Monday, the Dow dropping 35 points, NASDAQ off 119. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
It's a wonderful world of wings at KFC's Hot Wing Festival, where there's a wing flavor for all to enjoy. The sweet and savory teriyaki hot wings, the Korean hot and sweet wings, and our classic style KFC hot wing will satisfy any chicken wing lover's palate. All these flavors at KFC's Hot Wing Festival are available at all 8 KFC locations or for delivery. WhatsApp us at 300-FAST or order at KFCGuam.com. KFC's Hot Wing Festival. It's finger licking good.
It's 4 a.m., Monday, and you're literally sucking baby snot through a tube because she's congested. Man, that's love. And if you love her that much, love her enough to make sure she's buckled in the right car seat. To make sure your child's in the right seat for their age and size, visit nhtsa.gov/the right seat. Show them you love them. Keep them safe.